All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's AIIMS Principles Online Onboarding and Training session. My name is Nicola Lawrence and I'm the Senior Project Officer at AFAC. Some of you will know me and some of you won't. We have up to almost 60 people who've registered for this session, so we're very excited by that. I'm hoping that that's an indication of the interest in this new course and that we can get some students enrolled in it. Just a few housekeeping notes before we proceed. Today's meeting is being recorded and we'll make that available on the AFAC AIIMS webpage for those who haven't been able to attend the meeting. And also, if anyone wants to go back and have a look for a bit of a refresher. We are using the Q&A feature down the bottom. Should there be a Q&A feature down the bottom?
There's a chat function I can see.
All right, I think we'll just have to use the chat function. So if you've got any questions you want to ask, just put them in the chat function and we will address those at the end of the session. And to avoid any background noise, can we ask people to mute their audio unless they want to speak? That would be great. I'd now like to introduce you to our team who are participating in today's session. So from AFAC, we have Sandra Lenardi, Director of Workforce Development, who most of you or all of you will know. We have Shreyash, who's the IT Manager at AFAC. We have Ali, who's the System Application Administrator in the IT team at AFAC. And we have Luke Feng, who is one of our AFAC Finance Officers. We also have James Walker, who is the CEO and Software Engineer from Stock Software. And we have Amy Pearce, who is the LMS Instructional Designer, who's been heavily involved in the design of this course. A copy of the agenda has been circulated, so hopefully most of you do have that in front of you, but we will be going through that in a systematic way in today's session. So as per item 2 of the agenda, the purpose of this session is to, 1, to demonstrate the new AIIMS Principles online program, the design, the courseware, the delivery and the assessment arrangements. And number 2, to outline the steps required for an RTO to access the course for a student cohort. If there's anything else you want to add to that you want to get out of today's session, just put it in the chat box and we can address that at the end of today's session. And we can now move on to agenda item 3, where Sandra is going to provide a brief demonstration of the course with the help of Amy.
Thank you, Amy. If you could just bring up the screen. I know that some of you probably are all on mute, but I'm hoping you've had a chance to have a look at this before the meeting today, at least to familiarise yourself with some of the components within it. But for those that haven't, I'll just work with Amy to take you through a high-level overview of the course and how it's been designed. So this is the front page that every student will see when they go to log in to the course, and they'll put in their password and username and then go straight in. So this is the front page of the entire course. So once they log in, the first thing they'll see is the AIIMS Principles online course, which is the one we're talking about today. This is a nationally accredited course. Many of you will have been delivering it either through face-to-face training previously, or you may have your own online course, but essentially this will be the brand new course that we're going to focus on today. So this is the 16-hour course. So you just go to the top, click on AIIMS Principles Online, and the full screen comes up. One of the things I will mention to you is that based on the permissions, an administrator and an assessor will see what you're now seeing. So you'll see the full gamut of all the resources that are available on the screen. If you're a student logging in, you won't see all of the material and information the administrator and the assessor will see, which makes perfect sense. And Amy's now showing you, if you're a student, the information that you'd be provided. Now, I'm just going to move my images on this left to the top because it's blocking some of the imagery for me. So this is what a student will see, which is a narrower version of information. So if we could go back, Amy, to what an administrator and an assessor will see I'll take you through the details, bearing in mind some of you may have already had a chance to have a look at this. So in terms of the course scope, many of you are familiar with this as the full AIIMS Principles course. I'll talk about the AIIMS Awareness course separately afterwards. This is the one that's a prerequisite for people who go on to be trained for an IMT role. It's a requirement of the Emergency Management Professionalisation Scheme. It's a requirement, for example, if you go on to be an air attack supervisor or a person working in the aviation space. And by doing this course, it takes you through the entire system, all the principles that underpin it, the roles within the system itself, the incident management structure, and that saves you having to repeat this over and over again when you train for a role, and because this is reflected in the required knowledge in most of those units. So the way the course has been designed, there are 14 modules that span the first part I'll speak about in a moment, but the second part deals with all the IMT roles individually. In our pilot, we've asked all the students that went through it to estimate the time it takes to get through this course, and we will summarise and average that, but roughly between 30 to 60 minutes. Some people go through it really quickly, some people take more time. The average for this course is 16 hours and everything's been designed around that time frame. But as with any kind of training, if someone needs to take more time, that's just what they need to do, and others can do it quicker, they can do it that way. In terms of the assessment, there are 4 multiple choice assessment tasks, and they're spread out across part 1 and part 2, which I'll show you in a moment. We've designed it so there's an 80% pass mark. Amy afterwards will take you through and show you how the multiple choice questions work. You get to attempt it several times. We're not trying to, we're trying to provide a supportive environment for people to get through these assessments. But if they need to go back and refresh their understanding by going back to one of the earlier modules, they should do that. If they continue to struggle, this is where you might have an assessor step in or a trainer to give them some support. Finally, the last assessment task is a scenario-based exercise, which I'll take you through. And between the 4 multiple choice assessment tasks and the final scenario, they have all been mapped very thoroughly to the unit, and we can clearly show you that all the unit has been covered by both, or by that group of activities. Okay, someone who completes this course and meets the assessment requirements gets the unit of competency in relation to it. Now, I should stress that there are activities you do online and there are activities you can do in your workbook, and the workbook becomes a key part of this course. I would also stress, if someone comes along and is very experienced in AIIMS, they've maybe needing to get this unit for a particular requirement, but they've been operationally using AIIMS, and they feel that they don't necessarily have to go through the entire course. They can have a conversation with an assessor, have a discussion about maybe just doing the assessment requirements without having to do the full course. And that's something that has to be negotiated at your level with your RTO internally. We just make that option available for those that just want to refresh their skills but don't want to do the whole course because they're already fairly competent in this space. So I'll now take you down to the way the course, if I can move a bit further down to the components, Amy. So we won't go through all of it, but getting started, really, the module takes you through how to navigate your way through this course. So it provides you with more information about the resources that are available to you as a student. You can use the audio or the videos, what to do. It takes you through multiple choice questions. So essentially, it's like anything that helps the student familiarise themselves with the way the program's been designed. It takes about 30 minutes if you are downloading copies of the various resources that are available and reading them and taking your time. For someone who's just skimming and scanning, they could probably do it in 5 minutes. But again, if you are actually going through the process of downloading the resources onto your computer, that might make it a bit difficult. Is that better if I move the computer closer to me? Can you hear me better now? Yeah, okay. Apologies for that. Okay, so that I won't take you through that, but I'll move into now part 1, principles and the key concepts. So if we can click on part 1.
Sandra, I'll just change to a student, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So as a student, when you go into part 1, you'll see you have a series of modules. In fact, it takes you from module 2 through to module 6. And interspersed after each, you see this module 2, then module 3, you then go to the quiz, which is your first of the 4 assessment tasks. And we'll look at that in a moment. But for now, I'll just take you through module 3, key principles and underpinning concepts. So you then go to what is AIIMS on the left on module 2 and click on that, and we'll now go into the module itself. So if you want to click on that, Amy. Okay. So it takes you to the introduction, and you'll see the first slide really explains the content you're covering in this course. And you'll see a lot of familiar faces as we go through this. I think we've ransacked everybody's image library. So just wait for it, Serena. You'll come up a few times as well, but a number of you will. So the front slide tells you about the content. The second slide, Amy, shows, goes back, sorry, go back a bit, takes you to the learning outcomes. Sometimes it's they're a bit similar, but that's because essentially we're summarising the content up front and then explaining what the learning outcomes are. We then go into AIIMS principles and what they cover, and we know the key principles will be the ones that are there, a unity of command, etc. And then we go on to talk about the allied concepts, which are listed below. So the student can take their time, read through the various slides, and we can move now, Amy, to the next one. So we now go into the AIIMS principles. So what we do is we've set up the text so people can read their way through it. You click on each slide. You're encouraged to go through each slide before you can move to the next part. And we've spent a lot of time trying to get this really clear and accessible to students so that they can understand what each of these underpinning principles means. So there's been, additional text to what you will find necessarily in the AIIMS manual. And then we take it to the next step and we look at each of those principles in more detail. So the first one we focus on is unity of command. Again, sometimes we've interpreted some of the language and the definitions in AIIMS to make it as accessible as possible. So we'll just keep going. I won't go through all the detail, but this is one of the principles, and we've organised them in the way that we think a learner would best understand. We then go into span of control, and then if you click on span of control, it gives you more information to help a person understand the way span of control works. So all the way through this, we've had to work on the assumption there won't be someone there to explain everything. So we've had to be as clear as possible. We then have knowledge checks, which is one of the things we include throughout the modules. It gives a person a chance, if we could just stop there for a moment, to take the concepts and then apply them. So we've tried to do them through examples. So here's question 1. You've got a scenario. It's about a storm cell. You read through it, and then you're asked to think, well, what would be the span of control in this situation? And it gives a student a chance to actually apply their thinking and see how they've tracked. And so they submit their response. And if you scroll down, they get an explanation. So if the answer is incorrect, they get an explanation. So we can now move on. There's another one. So we've got another example. So we're trying to make this as practical as we can. We do the same thing. We ask them to think what would be the span of control for that situation, and then they get a response to how they've gone. Okay. So that's an example of the kind of activities we intersperse throughout the program. And this is another example. What happens if you exceed your span of control? And then they've got to think about this. There's more than one answer that could be correct. So they really have to spend some time considering what the correct answer is. They submit it and they get some feedback. Okay. So I'll just keep going as we go. And you can then click on functional management if you like, go to another one. But you can see all the way through, and we won't click on all of these, but there will be audio. Now, we've done all the recording and that for each of these key things. So we're not trying to have all text. We're trying to have some audio for people. There's also a transcript if someone wants to download what the person said, because maybe that's how they learn better. They've got that option as well. Now, all of this work is happening concurrently. It's been done. It's been embedded by Ruth right now into the final version of this course. I should mention this is a prototype and we should have all of this completed by early next week, ready to go with all the elements and components in it. All right, we'll just jump down perhaps a bit further down to, if I may, just, I don't know, allied concepts, for example. Again, this is another one where we take them through the concepts of command, control, coordination, leader's intent, mission, command. Where we can, we use some of the imagery within the AIIMS manual so people who've got a copy can have a look at that and make sense of it. And there's quite a bit that follows, but you'll notice there's activities that flow in. Some of these activities give you scenarios in the workbook. So there's a command, control and coordination scenario in the participant workbook. They can work their way through it. And then there's a whole series of activities where they can think about the characters in the scenario and work out what type of function they performed. Were they performing a control function? I'm going to guess it's control here. And it's right. So there's a mixture of activities on the screen, some activities in your workbook, but answers and support are provided all the way through. Okay. So we then jump down to, and I'm skimming here, down to summary. And so what we do is we ask them if they feel they need to go and review the chapter on the manual. They're encouraged to do that. It's interesting, I think a number of people have felt there's enough content in here without having to necessarily do that, but we then summarise the key points and that's how it looks. And then finally, there's a series of review questions, and all of these are designed to give the individual an opportunity to see how they're going. So they're told if they've met the pass mark once they've completed all the activities. Okay. So that's an example of a module in this. So if we come back out for a moment now, can I just ask you to go back to that front page again? I just want to show you the resources that they download on the right-hand side. Amy, if I take them to the online participant workbook, if you'd like to click on that. Now, I've just spoken about the workbook and Nicola's done a lovely design on this. This is the workbook. They can download this onto their computer or their iPad. You can even do it on your iPhone. And you can actually type in your answers into this because it's designed to be able to record your answers electronically. This is the one that, again, explains the course structure. It's reiterating the key points, what they need to do to complete it, what to expect. Can they skip some modules, which I spoke about before? Assessment again, and if they need help, you'll need to be thinking about who will provide that support in the agency. So then this goes through, I'll just do quickly, there's an example of a planning activity in the workbook, which they can type in their answers. All of this is matched to what you see as well on the screen. So everything's linked with one another here. So this is another activity.
Sorry,
yeah.
I think Joshua Humphrey wants to ask a question.
Of course. Yes, Joshua.
Good morning, Sandra. Sorry to interrupt. Just quickly, those knowledge checks that you showed us there, are they mapped as a formal part of the course assessment?
No.
Or are they simply there for the learner to evaluate their progress?
Simply there for the learner to evaluate their progress. But
Correct.
All the other, and I'll take you when we go back in a moment, I'll take you to the assessment mapping and you can see
Correct.
everything that is part of the formal assessment is mapped. Yeah.
Thank you.
Completely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we come back out of this, and this is something you'll need to have a bit of a look at and play with. Then there's the, if you look underneath that, there's also on the right-hand side under resources, there's also a participant guide to assessment, which is important for the learner to understand what's going to be required of them. This is another great looking document. And this takes the participant through the assessment process. So they've got all the information to hand to help them. There's information about the assessment process, the rules of evidence, your role as a learner. I'm skimming a bit here. The assessment strategies, yada, yada, yada. Now, I should mention some of this, all of this, in fact, has been updated because this is the prototype. These will all be completely updated by next week because we're still waiting to get that to be able to put it into a user acceptance testing site. So this is your assessment strategy, okay? I think that's probably enough, Amy. And just finally, I'll mention there's another document there that says application of AIIMS at a level 1 incident. We won't need to go in that, but it's a piece of doctrine that was developed for urban agencies. How does AIIMS translate to urban type situations? There's some case studies in there you can go have a look at, and we'll go to that. Can I just, before going to the point about the AIIMS manual, can we go back for a moment to the Assessor site, what the assessor and the administrator sees? Okay. Can you click on the Assessor's Guide to Assessment for a moment? This is the companion volume for the assessor. You've got the participants' guide to assessment. This is the Assessor's Guide to Assessment. So if you have a look at this and scroll down, it covers all the key things about their responsibilities as an assessor, the rules of evidence, professional, their professional judgment, all that kind of stuff. So that's all in here. And I'll just quickly go through rules of evidence, their requirements as their qualifications, their role as an assessor, the assessment strategy, which is, as I mentioned, there's 4 multiple choice questions and a final summative assessment. And this deals, the rest of this document, and I'll speak about this afterwards, deals with the scenario-based assessment at the end. So there's 5 pieces of assessment. This is the final piece. And what this does is it contains the 21 scenarios that have been developed on a variety of hazards and sample answers for the assessor. So there's 3 bushfire scenarios. There's scenarios on road crash rescue. There's scenarios for the water. There's scenario on a whale stranding. There's scenarios on use of AIIMS for recovery. So there's a variety of hazards, but for an assessor, they bring their own judgment to it. And there's the flood scenarios. But they are given some sample answers to assist them in things they should be looking for. But again, of course, they're bringing their own professional discretion and their professional judgment when they make the determination. Okay. So if we come out of that, I just want to quickly just show you to go to, Joshua, your question about mapping. So if you go into the mapping between the unit and the course, we've gone through this process. The back end is terribly detailed, but if you go through, you can see where everything has been mapped all the way through the online module content, all the multiple choice questions and the assessment tasks, everything has been mapped. Okay. So when, so I think that's probably sufficient, but it has been done, and it has been done very, very carefully, and Nicola will attest to all the back end stuff around mapping and so forth. And then finally, there's an opportunity for an assessor, and we don't need to click on that, but to show you, to provide us with evaluation and feedback. So I'll now take you through just very quickly to part 2, this AIIMS functions. I'll be really quick now because I want to keep within the time frame. Part 2 AIIMS functions. If you go into that as a student, what you'll see, the whole screen will be taken up. You've got each of the modules that have been developed for each of the roles, and then you've got assessment task 3, which is the next multiple choice question. Then assessment task 4, which is the AIIMS function, final multiple choice set of questions. We have put videos in there. Look, the videos are variable. You know, we've asked individuals who are very experienced in these roles to speak to us about what it means to be an incident controller. I mean, we can just click, if you like, on Module 7, for example. This is someone who works on the AIIMS Steering Committee, and many of you might know David Nugent, but he has been both. If we just go to Introduction, for example, he is very highly experienced as a controller. If we scroll down for a moment and just click on the audio. I don't know if you can hear it, I can't hear it here, but he talks about what it means to be an incident controller, the things that he thinks about when he's appointed, when he starts to talk to his team. And we've got a range of people who very generously gave of their time to speak about what it means to be a planning officer, a public information officer, logistics officer, etc. I can honestly say we aren't, you know, if someone wasn't to listen to the videos, they won't be disadvantaged, because whilst in some cases there is some additional new knowledge, they're really talking about their personal experience. Okay. In the audio transcripts, and you can also, by the way, download what they've said. I know, I think I've typed every single one, and that's meant sometimes listening to the same video for 20 times. Get that right. So we try to reflect how they speak as well. So for example, if I scroll down here, you get another example of another scenario. It's a water treatment plant, and then they go through, they read through all the stuff in relation to it, and then they're given a whole set of things to think about. Okay, and then click on what they would do. So we won't spend too much time here. This is really something you need to go back and have a look at in more detail. But that takes you to that. I'm going to come back to you, Amy, about the multiple choice questions, and I'll get you to choose whichever one you want to do. But if perhaps, yeah, are you happy to go to the Amy to show them how the multiple choice questions work?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'll go into the first assessment task 1 quiz, because I've set that up. So these multiple choice assessments, the student can attempt these 3 times. We have put in some little bit of help there for them to kind of review and reattempt to, you know, try and succeed in these quizzes. So there is a little note here about making note of your correct answers, and then when you go into reattempt, to then only change the questions that you got wrong. So I'll give you a little demo of how that works. At the moment, I've already attempted once, and I only got 6 out of the 19 correct. And let's pretend, for this sake, I've had my review. I've already checked which ones I got right. So if we just continue in this second attempt, I've already previously changed a couple of these to make this quicker. But what the student would do would just come in and change the ones that they got incorrect. So for this purpose, I'm just going to submit this because I've already changed some of my attempts, and we'll just see what happens. So I'll finish the attempt. This will give you, this screen here is important because it lets them know which ones they've changed, which then should marry up with, you know, how they're checking, you know, their review. So we'll submit that, and we'll see if I got them all right. I didn't. So I've only got 63%, and it says I've not successfully completed this assessment. I need 80% to do that. And then we're getting the note again to, you know, to make note of the correct answers and review. So over here, this quiz navigation is really handy. I mean, of course, they can go through and they can check, but this lets me know that I've got quite a few wrong. So in my last attempt, my third attempt, I need to get most of these right. So let's hope this works, but I should have set this up. So, all right, so 15 is A, 16 is D, 17 is D, B, and A. Now, please let me get at least 80%. Save. Oh, damn it. Well, that didn't work, did it? So that's a shame. I've not got that right. I've missed 1%. But what would normally happen is once they get to that 80%, they're actually shown up here that they've achieved the right answer. And it would say that. So my final grade is this. So I don't have any more attempts. So I can't do anything. I've failed this assessment task. And I would have to contact my assessor about this to check.
Originally, just to answer Louise your question, originally it was 100%. And because when you're dealing with multiple choice questions, it becomes really tricky, especially to make sure that you're covering off all the requirements of the unit. And we did originally have it as 100%. And after a lot of discussion, we made sure that whilst we didn't want, because the way the system works, it becomes really frustrating if a person keeps repeating, and they're making a mistake and they can't work out, you know what I mean, which is the wrong answer. So we had to set it up so that people can see the answers that are incorrect, so they can understand what they're getting wrong, and then go back and redo it.
My concern is that is supposed to be you get it all right, not a proportion of it right, because then the argument comes in, well, which ones did you get wrong? Well, if they're not important, why are they in there?
Yeah.
It's that whole vet compliance.
Yeah, and we really did spend a lot of time on this, and finally we decided as long as all of the assessment covers off, including the summative assessment, the requirements of the whole unit, and we do often have multiple choice questions that cover off several performance criteria as well. We felt, look, we genuinely felt we could demonstrate if they've completed all the multiple choice questions and the assessment task, they've met the requirement of the unit. But
is that written anywhere? Because the first thing an auditor's going to see or go into a validation is there's this 80%. Well, what if I got that 80% and you got that 80%? Did we actually come out with the same outcome? Yes. So they probably just needs something to explain why 80% is up there in big bold green letters.
That's good advice, because we spent a lot of time. Now you're asking me a question about how does the assessor overwrite the 3 attempts. I probably need to come back to that, Tony. I'll have to ask for some advice on that. But yeah, that's a good point. And we did spend a lot of time on that, and we felt that by the time after we'd mapped it all, we could legitimately show that they had covered off all the requirements of the unit. But we should put that in. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I'll just take you now finally to the final assessment task, just to show them, and then we'll come back to some of these questions. Yeah. So as I indicated, the final assessment is requiring someone to apply all the concepts to the assessment, to a particular scenario of their choice. We just click on that, and we've set 21 days to respond to a to submit your application, but it's really up to you. Like if you as an RTO say you want the person to do it within another period of time, or if you feel 21 days is too much, I'm happy to amend that. But they're the suite of scenarios that are available. We wanted to have some for those that are not operational folk. So they might be people who don't do operations and they can do a non-emergency event, but they still have to apply the concepts to AIIMS, because AIIMS says it's for all those groups. There's the recovery ones, which was really interesting. We based this on some real examples. Of course, there's the whale stranding. We've got to be carried away with the the public health ones and the hospital ones where people are attacking each other in the hospital. So they choose their hazard, they download their hazard, and then they can, sorry, I'm just looking at the questions, we'll come back to you and answer those. Then they can download the PDF if you scroll down, and they get the full scenario. The assessments are consistent across every scenario, and then they can complete the answers at the back. So that's the bushfire scenario 1. And then they can populate their answers in the text box here and then submit that to their assessor. It's interesting, some people in the pilot said they took them several hours, some felt took them a little bit longer, but ultimately each student will be a bit different, I suspect. But at least it's all there and they can download that onto their laptop. I can say I've been able to read all of this on my iPhone, most of the multiple choice questions for, very sadly, I was doing it about 11:30 at night to check how they were running, and I could do it. I could see the whole screen really easily, which was really nice on a small, normal iPhone. And I had no issues with that either. Okay, I'm just going to hand over. Nicola, are you happy to talk about the AIIMS manual?
Yeah. So we've been in negotiation with Amy in terms of the Moodle to see whether or not we could have the manual accessible, and we've also been talking to the IT team and our finance area. And we've now come up with a solution where if people want to download the AIIMS manual from the course here under resources, they will send an email to the aiimsonline@afac.com.au, and they will then receive a promotional code back. Then if they click on the link for downloading the manual, they need to put a promo code in and a download will become available to them. Shreyash may be able to clarify anything that I may have said incorrectly there, but that's my understanding of what will be happening there.
Yeah, so they'll be able to have a copy on their iPad or on their laptop or their iPhone. Again, it'll be a controlled copy so that you can't, send it all over the place. It's just your copy. And if you choose to print it, you can download and print it. And it's obviously a restricted copy. So we were trying to be as helpful as possible. It's taken quite a bit for us to negotiate an agreement to that internally. It's also taken quite a bit of effort on the part of the IT team to be able to do this too. So it's not been a straightforward activity, I might add. Okay, all right. So that takes us through really to the last step, which is the evaluation. So all the way through, we encourage people to give us feedback. Like if a multiple choice question is proving difficult or people are not happy, it's confusing people, we'd want to know and we would want to address that. So there's a participant survey, so when they complete the course they give us feedback, and we'll keep anything that needs to be addressed. Obviously if there's a problem we will address it. They just populate the details below, and then we're using SurveyMonkey to do this, and they give us feedback. And then we will track this. If there's a common problem as opposed to just one individual's having a problem, then we will certainly do our best to address that. There's also an assessor evaluation form. So if the assessor, as they're working through it, goes, oh, gee, crikeys, I'm consistently getting people responding incorrectly to this particular task or question or whatever, or there is some problem in the content that's confusing people, then we will certainly address that. You will, and you can see that's the assessor evaluation form. In some cases, when we ran the pilot, we involved people from a broad range of members. So we had AMSA, Australian Maritime Search and Rescue, had 5 of their staff go through this course. We had some staff from CFA who kindly went through it, and we did have some other individuals from elsewhere. We took even from within the AFAC office, and we took on board all their feedback and certainly sought to address all of that, which is why that's being done as we speak now, and it should be ready by next week. And so hopefully we've got something that reflects their judgments and their advice as well in the final product. You will find sometimes there will be some reinforcement. So some of the review questions, which is really to help the learner, can kind of come up sometimes in similar ways, covering the same point, and that's a bit of reinforcement just to help the learner, particularly given if they don't have a trainer nearby or a facilitator nearby. The more practice they get, the better. So essentially, I'll stop it there, and I noticed a number of questions which we'll come back to, but the course, the accreditation documentation is available, which meets part of your requirements. The mapping is available, the assessment tools are there, and the support answers are also provided. So hopefully that will meet your needs. Okay, so I'm now going to hand back to you, Nicola, unless there's any critical questions people want to ask me now. Okay.
Andrew, did you want to go through some of those questions that relate directly to the...
I can't see them on my screen here.
Okay, so the
hang on, it's at the bottom, there's 10. All right, I'll try and answer as many of them as I can. Okay, the first one was, I'm sorry, I am talking directly into it. Why not? Yes. How does the assessor overwrite the 3 attempts? I don't know the answer to that, Tony. Is Amy able to assist with that? Because that's one of the technical questions.
Yeah, so they can go into the grade book and they can override the attempts if they want to.
Yeah.
So this should work from my screen. So they have the ability to come here and edit these grades. So they would just edit them, or they can choose the person and edit their attempts. So yeah, they can override them if they need to. Yeah.
Okay. And the next one is, if the learner has to contact a facilitator, can they resubmit or have another assessment task? I guess ultimately it is your call as the RTO, requiring, the one actually issuing the statement of attainment. If you have a different scenario that you want to use, that's entirely your call. But there are quite a number there to choose from. But if there's something you particularly want to focus on, that may be a learning point, that would be your call, because you'll be issuing the unit. That would be my answer to that. Letitia, I think your question's been answered. Thank you, Joshua. It's articulate RISE, which is what's been used to produce the modules as you see them. Nicola, the sound is not good. I'm not sure. Is that something?
I'm not sure. I've tried to bring the computer a bit closer, but I'm hoping that's slightly better.
Okay. Yeah. Serena, this is the AIIMS manual. Yes, we would too. That's all I'm going to say. I don't think anyone has any idea how much we've had to negotiate to get that simple requirement through, let me tell you.
I know you're aware, I just have to bring it.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I am aware. I am aware. Okay, yep. Assessor feedback part is good, as some questions in the face-to-face are a challenge. This is a quick way to provide feedback. Yes, thank you. The next one is, Letitia, are closed captions available for the video clips? Someone's going to have to help me. I'm not sure what, Letitia, closed captions are.
No, I'm not quite sure either.
It's obviously an important technical term.
So as part of our accessibility requirements for web standards,
yeah,
anything longer than 5 minutes generally for video needs closed captions. So that's the little black sentences that speak to what the presenter is talking.
Right.
Subtitles.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, right.
I don't think any of our videos would go longer than 5 minutes.
I've been an instant controller for over 15 years. During that time, most of my...
No, none of them go for more than 2.
Okay.
I can confirm because Letitia, I, in many instances, typed it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, yeah, and if you see some language there like bogged down, that's how people speak.
Yeah.
I started to correct it, and I was taken to task about that. Stop trying to edit what they say. Right. Okay.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
So no more than, I'd say the max would be 2.5 minutes, the absolute max.
Yeah. Well, you've met the requirements with having the transcripts there.
Yeah. Good.
Yes.
Oh, good to know that. Yeah. By default, I think to everyone. And we're also going to have one of the pieces of feedback we had regarding the transcripts is maybe to have some, introduction of what they're covering as well, and that's happening too.
Okay, fantastic. Also, with one of the other questions with adding extra attempts.
Yes.
So the teacher can go in and actually add extra attempts per student. So if you go back into the quiz section.
That's what Amy was showing. Is that right?
No, that was in the grade book. So if you go in as an assessor.
Yeah.
There's a cog on your top right.
Mm-hmm.
It says award extra attempts. I can't see it, but.
So because this is set up with only 3 attempts, the assessor would only be able to change an attempt rather than add another attempt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Is that okay, Letitia?
It's not my course. It's the way that you set it up.
Yeah, we've got it set at 3, so I mean, yeah.
Can we look in? Maybe we can look into the assessor being able to add another attempt.
So rather than edit the grade book straight away, make the student do the quiz again.
Yep.
Yeah.
That would be better from a compliance perspective as well if you're going into the vet sector with this.
Yep.
As opposed to an assessor adjusting on a student's grade, we're actually showing they had a 2nd attempt and a 3rd attempt.
Okay, that's good feedback.
Sorry, Sandra, it's Fadia. Yeah. I'm just a bit confused there. So if you don't get the 3 attempts, can the student go? I missed that bit. Sorry.
Yeah, you can go back. Yeah, if you're still struggling to get through it, you can either go back and start again and go through the modules again, or you can contact someone if you're struggling for whatever reason.
A conversation. So for maintenance purposes, if there's nobody around, they can just go in themselves and just start again. That means they have to log out and just go back into the module again?
Yeah, I would think so. Is that how it works, Amy? Yeah, you go back out.
If they've done the 3 attempts at this stage, you cannot read, you've failed at this stage. That's how the course is set up.
Can't they go back, Amy, and redo it again?
They would have to be they'd have to be taken out and re-enrolled, or the admin would have to totally get rid of their attempts. So they can't. It can be done, but it would have to be an admin would have to go in and reset all attempts and start again. So the student can't automatically, go in and re-attempt themselves.
So in vet, it's not pass or fail. You're either satisfactory or you're not satisfactory. So at the 3rd attempt, you're unsatisfactory. You need to go back and do some more learning before you have another attempt. If we start using pass and fail, auditors are going to come down almost like a stack of house bricks. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the next one is to do with Mark Beach. Each of our participants would need a login for the AFAC platform, or can we integrate? We'll talk a little bit more if we can, Mark, in the next session around this, and because that's part of what we're going to be covering. And thank you, Tony. Subtitles, yes. And we've got some answers, helpful answers. Will there be access to student material for validation activities by the RTO? Yes, that's part of the advice that's in the participant workbook and the assessment guide that material might be required by the RTO.
Thanks.
Yeah. Mark, is there any feel for how long it takes to complete the course, both with and without doing the workbook. That was interesting because we asked all the students that did pilot for us to tell us how long it took. We had some students saying it took them, one student from AMSA saying it took 10.5 hours, another one saying from the same organisation it would take them about 5 days. My sense of it is I couldn't differentiate with and without the workbook. I think people who are very experienced will go through it really quickly, and those that perhaps have less knowledge are going to take a little bit longer. Some students, may want to bypass the workbook because that's their way of operating, and this is where the RTO will need to be very clear about what it expects. If they want the student to submit their workbook, that's going to be an internal discussion, but we've said to them that they need to be aware that may be requested. Okay. Okay, I think that just fabulous questions, by the way. I'm very grateful. So I think I'll stop now just so I don't lose the opportunity of the other stuff that needs to be covered. Nicola, are you happy to move to inviting James? Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think I've gone about 20 minutes over time. I'm sorry.
Right. So we're on to item 4 now, and James Walker will be giving us a demonstration of lots of the points that are under item 4. The steps required for an RTO seeking to access the course for a student cohort. So James, you should have screen share access, and I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Just attempting to get it to share now. Okay, so with a bit of luck, you are seeing the courses there at the moment. Just confirmation on that, please.
Yes, I can see James, the course.
Sorry, James, would you mind putting your video on?
Attempting to find where the heck Zoom's gone. You can't change your video whilst you're sharing screens.
Oh, okay. The things you learn.
Yeah. Okay, coming through now?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, so good to meet many of you who I've interacted with to some extent over supporting the previous site. So today I want to touch on a couple of the activities that agency administrators had to do as part of, or the primary activity agency administrators had to do in the old site, and that was upload users. So today in the demonstrations, we've clearly run through the new course. It has a slightly different URL at the moment, but the important thing to note here is that this is a new instance of Moodle running at the moment, a single course. The older AIIMS 4 course and the AIIMS intro course are still running on the old website. The old website will persist, I'm told by Sandra and Nicole, through until early next year. And that means that if you're uploading students to this new course, you're going to have to upload them on the new site, and if you want them to continue to use the intro course, then you must upload them on the old site. I think there's a request to stop pushing new students through the old AIIMS 4 course, but I'll sort of leave that direction to AFAC. So just to be clear, we're going to run through uploading students to the new AIIMS Principles course here. The activity for uploading to the old course has not changed. There's just perhaps some business rules around when you should and when you shouldn't. AFAC IT will talk to you over the whole migration process as the two sites become one down the track in early next year, we hope. So I'm currently logged in as a sort of some form of super user, I'm not quite sure what. If you switch over to I'm just going to switch over to an agency administrator here for the moment. There's still some work going on around the layout of bits and pieces of this, but to get to the bulk upload feature at the moment, you're clicking into site administration, and I've bookmarked the upload users link. I believe that once we finish configuring the agency administration, right, all of this extra guff will go away and you won't have to scroll through it to find the users section and then the upload users bit. This will all be shrunk down so that all this extra functionality is hidden. As per the previous documentation though, the thing you're after is the upload users function. We use this to perform a bulk upload of students into your own group. So this course is set up in the same way as the other courses. It uses groups to segregate different users from each other, users from different agencies from each other. So you will have to construct a file, an Excel file, in exactly the same format as you had to in the past. The only change here is that we have a new code for the course. So inside your file in the past, actually, can you see my other window at the moment? Can you see the spreadsheet I've got up there? Or is the sharing only? Okay, hang on, let me just change the sharing again. Let's go to that whole desktop. We should hopefully now see this black window that's popped up. I've just got this open in a text file instead of in a spreadsheet, but this is exactly the same file as you would have had in the past. The only difference is that now we now have a course code of AIIMS principles. AIIMS principles is the code for this new course. The old one still exists, so the old AIIMS one and the old intro one still exist if you're uploading to the old website, but for this new website, you put in AIIMS principles. You'll still have to put in your agency code. That's the group code that has been given to you in the past. It's the same group code as before if you are progressing from the old site to the new. The upload process is slightly revamped in terms of appearance, but other than that, exactly the same process. Once you've reached the upload page, you can bookmark it over on the here the first time you go to this web page, this particular section, and I use that feature just to allow me to get into this quickly. Sorry, was that ding an implication that somebody's asked a question?
No.
No, okay, cool. Zoom loves making noises. You specify the file that you wish to upload through the choose a file option here. The dialog opens up. As I say, slightly changed in appearance, but all the same buttons under the cover. Choose your CSV file, click upload, and continue and hit the upload to preview the first step. In exactly the same way as we did in the past, we do recommend that if you are going to use a spreadsheet again and again, and that works fine, you can keep adding to the same spreadsheet over time. We recommend that you add new rows to your spreadsheet at the top rather than at the bottom. And the reason for this is that when you come to this second page in the upload process, it does give you a preview of the first 10 records in the file. So if you've added new records to the top, you'll get them previewed, where if you add them to the bottom, then you might not see the new ones. You'll only be seeing the old records. At this point, it's said that the file is okay. You may occasionally receive errors here if it objects to perhaps the number of columns you have, or the fact that it doesn't recognize the columns. The most common issue we have with uploading, or that people run into in this space, is that they've inadvertently added additional columns into Excel just by clicking and typing, or past the end of column, the group 1 column. So if you inadvertently put additional content out there, then Moodle doesn't like it because you've now got an extra column that it doesn't know what to do with. We also have had a few people attempting to upload users where the usernames are not in an approved format. And an approved format means they have to all be lowercase, they're letters, numbers, and a couple of additional special characters. You can't have spaces. The most common one has been people trying to put capital letters in there. Moodle requires all the usernames to be lowercase. We still recommend that you don't specify the password in the file. Moodle will send out the password to you, so to the users after they become enrolled. That way they get an email which tells them where to go to log in, but also an email which tells them their username and password, which saves you having to disseminate that information. That said, the email is pretty generic. So if you want to send them an announcement saying, hey, we've enrolled you and this is why you've been enrolled in the AIFAC course, then you might want to put passwords into here, into your spreadsheet, have it uploaded, and then the user will not get an email from the system. You'll be able to send them your own specific email. It does force a password change. If you specify a password in here, you can say that you can force a password change the first time after they log in. And if you are putting passwords in, we do recommend you do that. That's about the only setting we ever suggest you change. The rest of the settings should just be left the same, left in their defaults. This will ensure that if you reuse your file and just add new rows in, then it uploads and only creates the new entries. It doesn't go and reset anybody else's data. If you go and start changing the upload type, then you could potentially go and change settings that your users have fiddled with themselves as they've been doing the course. So best not to do that. The default values down here should pretty much never be changed. So at this point here, you've done an upload of your file, you've received a preview, you probably changed no settings at all, and then you hit upload users, the button down the bottom. Having hit upload users, you will get a display of the, for every row in the file. So if you've got 1,000 people in your file, then this is going to get rather long. And for each one of them, you're going to get given a description of what happened. And hopefully your new user is created as a new user. We get a quick link through to them if we want to look at it. And they should have been enrolled in the AIIMS Principal course as a student and in your agency code. Now, in my particular case, I didn't put in a reasonable value in my file, but so that user is now uploaded into the account. And if I were to go over to the course, now I think, unfortunately, I think I'm actually in a group called Test, and I've just uploaded somebody into a different course. But under the grades section, when you go in here, you'll see that your group is listed as the one in here. So you can't change that. And you should see, sorry, the grader report, not the overview report. Your group is selected in there and you'll see all of your users in here according to your group. If you incorrectly upload, to attempt to upload to the wrong group, you won't gain access to those students. If you ever do that, you should contact IT and have a conversation with them about getting all that fixed up. You can fix it up yourself in a way by re-uploading the file again with the correct group in it. That will get the students into your student pool, but it doesn't take them out of the old pool that you put them into wrongly. So you will still need IT to do some cleaning up in that circumstance. If you ever make an upload on the data, then there are some fields you can fix as part of the upload process. And if we take a look back at the uploading here, I'll choose my file again. You can update the username, the first name, last name, the city, and re-enroll them in or fix up the course stuff, but you cannot change the username or email address. Those are used by Moodle to uniquely identify the user and tie this particular line in your file through to the user account. And if you discover that you've inadvertently created a user with an invalid email address or a username that you want to change, you will need to get in contact with the help desk and AIFAC IT and have them fix that up for you. It's a quick thing to do, but it will take time. The only other slightly interesting thing that happens here occasionally is that Moodle will send out the email after you've uploaded the users. And sometimes we have agencies that have problems receiving either a large number of emails from AIFAC in a short period of time, or just generally don't trust the content of the email that gets sent out. It does look a little bit suspicious. It's a hey, look, here's your new login, please click here, style email. We've worked through that problem for most agencies now and got emails from the old training site approved. When this new one goes live, there's a possibility that we'll start running into a couple of those problems, and we just ask for a bit of patience with the admins of those agencies whilst we sort of sort that out with your IT departments. So that's really just a run through of the way that we handle users in this new course. It's largely identical to the old case. The only change is that the course code here has become AIIMS Principles instead of AIIMS or Intro. And at the moment, you're going to have to upload to the 2 different websites if you still have people running through the old Intro course. So I think that's about me. Are there any questions?
There is, James, a number of questions. One from Letitia, can you add roles on import, for example, Assessor?
No. So if you want to get, the only role you can allocate to people here is the student role. So if you want to manage your administrators and assessors, okay, I didn't run through that. Sorry, I thought that had already been covered. As part of being onboarded as an agency that runs students through this course, we will go through an onboarding process where we would normally work through what we've just seen with you in a little bit more detail, and also demonstrate to you how to extract the grader report, the course completion report, which is the one that Amy demonstrated earlier. We would also then ask you to nominate the contact details of your staff that will be agency administrators, that is people who are able to create new accounts, and people who are agency assessors. And those are the people who can come in and export the grader report, export and assign grades and help out students. So they're not actually students, and AIFAC doesn't charge for agency administrator or agency assessor users. So those 2 roles have to be granted explicitly by AIFAC IT. So as part of the onboarding process, we would get that information and create the accounts for you. Subsequently, if those roles change, staff move around in your organisation, then you need to contact AIFAC IT to get those permissions removed and added to the new users, during which time we would also run those new users through just a very quick training of what their role or how to use the site from their perspective. So no, you cannot allocate anything other than student. How would you know if and when people receive an email, and how would you deal with it? So if the email doesn't reach them, there's 2 ways we have observed this happening. In some cases, the mail server silently just drops it. So for example, some of the government departments in Victoria, if you send an email which their mail servers consider possible spam, they don't actually necessarily feed it onto the user. They put it in sort of a holding space, and hopefully they inform the user that they've got suspect spam, and the user may receive it later. They may notice that. From your perspective, or from AIFAC's perspective, we have no way of knowing that that has taken place. So we just we treat that as though it was a successful email. In other cases, the mail server will send it back and reject the email as either unroutable because the email address was wrong, or because the content is unacceptable. If that happens, the email does bounce back to AIFAC IT, and so they will be aware of the fact that there is a student who didn't receive the email. Hopefully they will then be in contact with the agency administrator to try and sort that out. Usually we have found, it is a very small percentage of users who run into this, but we have found generally that the student, of course, reports it pretty quickly as well, because they were expecting to take the course and they haven't received the email within a couple of minutes. So there's a combination of things that try and pick that up, and to resolve it, we often end up having to assign a fixed password to that user and just send them the password via a direct email. which we will send via your agency administrator. So conversations between users and IT support here don't sort of go on. The pipeline is your users through to your agency administrators, through to AFAC IT, and back and forth in that fashion. So the AFAC IT's responsibility is to support your agency administrators in their management of the site. It's not to provide end user direct support. So if you have users who haven't got a password, they should be educated about speaking to your administrators first. Then the administrator should initially check that they have created the account correctly with the right username, the right email address. If that's all correct, then get in contact with AFAC IT. Is the agency a code equivalent to a cohort? No, we haven't actually used Moodle cohorts in this case. They don't provide exactly the functionality we want to use. From a Moodle standpoint, an agency code is a group inside the course rather than a cohort.
Can I just add to that, James? Letitia, we actually provide the agency codes, the AFAC IT team will. The codes that some of the RTOs are currently using will be transitioned across, but any new people onboarding, we will create the code for you.
So yeah, as part of that onboarding process for a new agency, and sorry, I was unaware that we perhaps had an audience here where some people weren't uploading to the old course, but as part of that onboarding process for your agency, we will run you through that whole setup of setting up your admin staff and your assessors, and we will at that point there provide you with the code that is for your agency.
Okay, so it's managed through groups.
It's managed through groups, yes, yep.
Okay.
And so that's why on the screen here, when we were looking at the, and I go into the grades, for example, your group will be the one that you are put into, and that will be the group that you're allowed to see the students of.
Okay, thank you.
James, just the other thing is some agencies actually have more than one group. Is that correct? Because they want to have different invoicing for different areas within the agency?
No. There was only one agency that did investigate the concept of segregating the users completely, and that was where the particular agency had a commercial arm as well as a non-commercial arm, and they wanted to be able to completely separate those, and in the arrangement with AFAC was different for agency staff versus commercial customers. So there was a reason there to have a different group. The way that we separate out if you are a large agency that is spread over a significant area and has a large number of students and wants to segregate, wants to break up your invoice, AFAC suggests that when you upload the files, you upload it with a, let me just demonstrate here. In the file, there is a city column.
Yeah. Okay.
And we suggest that you populate that, and it's an unfortunate naming for a field, but it's one of the fields that's on a student. So we suggest you specify a separation, whatever value you want in here that allows you to break up your organisation into sort of smaller sets. You put that into the city column. So I think QFIS is one that does this. They separate out different regions and put their region codes into here so that when you upload students, the students are essentially allocated to a region, and that way when AFAC invoices, they can separate it out by that region, and thus the invoicing can be spread around the organisation rather than just one big bill and lots of work on your part to try and work out how you want to separate it out. So if you do want to provide a bit of information to AFAC about your own internal grouping of students, we suggest you use the city column, or we request that you do use the city column, because that's the one that Nicola's set up to segregate on when she's invoicing.
James, there's a question there from Mark Balash.
Yep. So just
can I? Yeah. Okay. I was going to say you might be able to answer the IT side, but we'll talk a bit about that as well a bit further down.
Yes. So the changes in the move to this particular course and what's happening with the old AIIMS course and the old intro course, I'll completely leave to Nicola and Sandra. And will each of our participants would require a login for the AFAC platform, or can we integrate with our own LMS platforms? So in the old course, we certainly supported integration with your own LMS through LTI. So if you want to work through that, then it's have a conversation with AFAC IT, but we've certainly got people using LTI as a means of embedding the Moodle course inside, or AFAC's Moodle course inside your LMS. If you do go down that route, then you don't have to handle the whole bulk upload of students, of course, because students are automatically transferred when they first start attempting the course and that kind of stuff. So if you want to set up an LTI interaction, then that can be done. If you want to integrate in a different way, you'd probably have to have a conversation with AFAC IT about what your preferred option is instead. And it would need to be something that Moodle supports reasonably simply. Will LMS integration extend to the SMS? It depends entirely upon your student management system. So, for example, we might have some people in the audience, but if for example, your LMS was a Moodle environment as well, and you used LTI to tie them together, then your student management system is sort of embedded in Moodle in a way already. And as your students are enrolled internally in your own one, when they start this course, they automatically get a record inside your Moodle, and it will link up. In your particular case, I don't know at all. I don't know anything about VetTrack, sorry. So I couldn't answer authoritatively as to just how the integration will take place. We could certainly investigate it.
Okay.
I think that's all the questions that were related to that portion of the demonstration. So I'll hand back now to Nicola.
Okay, so thank you very much for that, James. That was very interesting, even from my behalf, from my point of view, having worked on this course since late last year. So just to continue through item 4, post this meeting, when we're ready, when agencies are ready to actually onboard the course and start uploading students, we will arrange a meeting with that agency and our IT team, and prior to that, we will need to get your administrative contacts, a list of your assessors and any technical contacts so that we can actually create accounts for them. Then we will have a training session where we can actually then go through the uploading and onboarding, and we will do that with the individual agencies as opposed to a big group like this. So that's how we will proceed post this meeting. If we move over to item number 5, the time frame for the release of this course, we are anticipating that it will be the week of the 9th of November. So if there are any agencies out there who are ready to start onboarding as of the 9th of November, can you please send me an email, and then we can start the conversation about how we go about that and setting up a meeting with AFAC, the IT team and your agency, and then we can, I think perhaps an hour might be enough, and we can start the process of getting that activated. In terms of 5.2, planning required by RTOs to onboard their students in timeframes. Once again, our launch date is the week of the 9th of November, so we will start rolling out the agencies as part of that process. 5.3, parties involved and responsibilities. Most of you would have received 2 documents. One was the onboarding document and the other was the support document. On pages 1 and 2 of the support document, there is a list of the involved parties and their responsibilities. So we have 3 parties listed in there. One is AFAC, and it has the responsibilities for AFAC. One is the member agency or the RTO, and what your responsibilities will be in relation to that. And then we have the AFAC IT team. So I encourage you all to read those documents very carefully. And if you have any questions, please let us know at the aimsonline@afac.com.au email address. Site administration. The site administration will be the responsibility of the AFAC IT team. In the past, it has been James from Stock Software, but we are transitioning that over. We will still have James in the background as we do the transition in case there are any teething problems, but IT team will be taking over full site administration of the new course. Access to the AIIMS manual has been discussed. 5.7, the IT team help desk arrangements. In the first instance, we are asking people to contact us through the email address, which is aimsonline@afac.com.au. There will be a phone number, which we will provide you all with, but in the first instance, we are encouraging people to make any contact through the email address, and we would be looking at a 24-hour turnaround time or sooner. Timeframes for switching off the AIIMS Introduction and AIIMS Online course. Sandra, did you want to talk to
I do. The AIIMS Intro course is along with the other AIIMS course now. It reflects the earlier version of AIIMS, and we've moved past that. I think but if there are some students still finishing off on the AIIMS course, we'd obviously do the right thing, give them the time to do that. But we clearly need to switch both off, but we want to do it in a way that doesn't cause any disruption to your arrangements. So we will let you know and seek your advice on that when the final cutoff point is. The other thing I was going to mention is I've been liaising closely with the CFA. We're now developing, and I'm just pending acceptance to the arrangement. We're looking at developing the AIIMS Awareness, which is the 5-hour course that will replace the Intro to AIIMS. That course, many of you will recall, was reaccredited or was accredited for the first time at the beginning of this year. And so we've already started the process of planning the review of that, and that we're hoping we will have finalised before the end of the year. So both the new AIIMS online course that you've just seen, the Principles one, and the AIIMS Awareness ones will both be available on the new site, and we will close off the Intro to AIIMS and we'll close off the previous AIIMS Principles course for the reasons I've just mentioned. Otherwise, we're training people to something that has been superseded in 2017.
Sandra, have we, I think the initial date that we had set for closing off of those courses was the end of January.
Yeah, so I think, that's our thinking internally, but we will make sure we consult first with everybody so that when we close it down, no one's disrupted. So if you could let us know if there is a requirement to go beyond that date, that would be really helpful. Yeah, but in other words, they're going to go though. Bottom line, they're going to go. The other thing I'd probably mentioned that to follow on from some of the comments you made, Nicola, around providing some further support to agency administrators. It's really important that you make some decisions internally on who those people are, and because what we would like to do is to try and run perhaps multiple agencies through those PD events rather than trying to do agency per agency, because obviously you can imagine it's a big drain on the IT team. So that we might have 4 or 5 agencies bringing along their administrators, their assessors, and whoever else is an important stakeholder in the process to be brought up to speed on what to do. And that will mean that if an agency is having additional issues, we can assist them separately, but we're trying to run as many together as we can. There is perhaps one thing I would like to, and I know it's a question Tony asked me, and I suspect other people who've been doing this before might be able to answer, is if people, how do they then take the information if they're dealing with this course and plug it into their LMS system? Tony, is that still a question you need an answer to? Oh, James is answering. Yes, please.
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm assuming LTI Bridge will allow us to actually suck that information back into our records, and it's really about us. If we train using it for this period of time, and then we don't train with it going forward, we've still got access to the records as we would be as an RTO.
Thank you. James, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just a little bit. I suppose it comes back to AFAC's not an RTO, so they're not going to be the record keeper for who has achieved the marks. AIIMS did work through how you could capture a final grade in the system. So because that last step in the course isn't an online component, there is an assessor component for which somebody has to record a mark somewhere. You can record that mark inside the AFAC system, and of course you can extract that through the grader report. But in almost every case, because you are already an RTO, you will already have a student management system and a records keeping mechanism somewhere else. And thus, we've actually not observed anybody, I don't think, in the old courses capturing that final grade inside the AFAC system. So if you want to, by all means, put it in there, but realistically, you've already got business processes for capturing that system in your own, that mark in your own systems.
It goes to the evidence. So we're right in the middle of an external audit with VRQA, and the scrutiny over the nature of the evidence and what we've got. So recording the final mark is one thing, but at audit, we need to be able to produce the detail that goes behind that mark for a period of minimum of 12 months. But in our case, we generally try and keep our records longer than that. And yeah, the final grade we have to keep for 30 years, but it's actually what made up the decision making. You need to be able to, an independent person needs to be able to go back and capture it. So
yeah, so if you're using LTI, it will push back the module and quiz components. If you're not using LTI, or even if you are, the grades are still all kept inside the AFAC system there.
Yeah.
So we don't turn off any of those student accounts. So they'll always.
We'll be chatting shortly.
So finally, CFA and AFAC are going to work on the AIIMS awareness course. So we will certainly also come back when we pilot it to any of you, if you're interested in reviewing it when it's ready for that. And what we're seeking to do is work, again, not try and reinvent the wheel, but work with what's already been done in the first part, but bring some elements of part 2 into part 1 with some different activities and assessment, and then get it out to you for your commentary. So that probably takes me to another point, and then I'll hand back to Nicola, and that's around the costing of the course. One of the things we had to negotiate with great debate over making available the online course was to find a way we could do it, and it wasn't automatically straightforward, and that's why the IT team has done a bit of work trying to set it up with promo codes, yada yada yada. So the previous cost in your agreement was for $20 per student to do the course, and the student's required to have a copy of the manual, which is $32. So what we've done is we've negotiated that the course cost, because we've invested quite a lot of money to do it, would be $60 plus GST, but it's essentially an $8 increase on the previous arrangement. Because if you had the course 20 and 32 for the manual, it would have been 52 anyway, and that's part of the license agreement arrangements. So the cost of the course will be, as I mentioned, $60. They get a copy of the manual, they get to do the course plus GST. So what that will mean is we will update the schedule to the agreement as per our normal arrangements, and you'll get that as part of making sure your agreement is current and up to date as well. So I guess they really now hand back to Nicola around if there are any questions that people have.
Yes, so I've gone through the questions that have come up through the chat line, and I think most of those have been answered. So does anyone have any verbal questions they would like to ask of any of the team members?
Yeah, sorry, Josh Humphrey here again from BKCS. I think I had the very unfortunate audio sort of lapse through 2 or 3 minutes right when the LMS integration was being discussed. I wouldn't mind just staying on the line with someone. I heard LTI being mentioned, so perhaps that's the mechanism you're potentially planning, but I missed all of that discussion, so I'd appreciate just hanging on the line with someone to discuss that if I can.
Any other questions? Okay, as I've previously mentioned, we are looking at a launch date of the week of the 9th of November. So if any agencies are ready to go and start onboarding now, can you please send an email to the AIIMS online, and we will start having the conversation and setting up accounts and arranging a time to go through it with you with the IT team. Some of you may not be ready for that, and that's okay. We'll work around when you are ready, and we can start that onboarding process. Sandra, did you have anything else to add? Otherwise, I think
finally, are people feeling that it is looking reasonable at your end? Is there any feedback in terms of how it looks or feels? Bearing in mind we're still waiting for you're looking at a prototype. The next version will have all the audio and transcripts and everything else. People still coming to terms with all the detail?
All good.
All good? Great. Yeah, all good. Thank you. The other thing I'll mention is one of the things that I've been talking to the CFA about in the AIIMS awareness course, because it's only a 5-hour course, is to try and do the entire course online. So that means everything has to be to take the question we were asked earlier, which was a valid one from Louise, to make sure that it's absolutely compliant with RTO requirements. We're looking at designing it so the entire course becomes robust but totally done online. Are people comfortable with that concept? I'd be interested just to get a sense from people how they feel about that, given that course, just by way of background, is really designed for a whole myriad of people that may want to understand the system but don't necessarily, you know, go on to perform an IMT role, but they need to understand it because they may be a support person in an incident control centre, or they might be someone who is in the field providing some support activity.
Your only catch will be if the unit's asking for demonstration of performance.
Yes. Yeah.
Which it's a bit hard to do sometimes with online.
Yeah, so we'll
depending on what they're
double check
asking
that.
for.
Thank you. Good advice. We'll double check that to make sure, because it has to be compliant at the end of the day. Otherwise, we're in trouble. Yeah.
I mean, some things you can simulate through an e-learning environment, but course in basic wildfire awareness, go and use a RACO, bit hard to do on a e-learning platform. So yeah, AIIMS might be a little bit easier.
I think I'm just having some funny images about how you might do that, but let's not go there. I love the step up and the one lick method. I'm just figuring out how you'd explain that either too. But using a RACO. Okay, so thank you so much. I think we've gone just a few minutes over time. Am I correct in saying that, Nicola?
I think we allowed 2 hours, so I think we.
Oh, okay. So we've got more time. Great. Any other comments people might want to make? Because I feel very grateful. The feedback's been excellent. It's given us some really good ideas, really, really useful feedback. If people want to be part of the pilot for the next round, particularly given if we're trying to do it all online, that would be really helpful. We have to get it right. So you can let me know separately. So I'll hand back to you, Nicola.
Okay, now I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask Josh, did you want to stay online and have a chat to James Walker about the...
That would be fantastic.
Yep. Okay.
I will also mention, Nicola, we've taped this because we've had a request for the recording of this meeting for other decision makers.
Yeah, and that will be available on the AIIMS webpage, and I'll send communication out about that. So if you've got staff members that weren't able to attend today, that would like to see it, it'll be available. I'll once it's up and uploaded and ready to access, I'll let everyone know.
Yeah. And you've also updated the web page on AIIMS?
Yep, the web page has been updated. There's a few tweaks to be made, but it's effectively there. The web page is more targeted for new RTOs, people wanting to become RTOs, as opposed to people who currently are.
Yeah. The other thing I will mention, and Suresh, I haven't had a chance to chat with you about this, but Trevor has asked this. One of the things to, I understand that the AFAC IT team has like a portal where, you know, there's information provided so that if an AFAC, for example, staff member has a glitch, they go there, they work it out, try and do whatever they can do beforehand, before they then contact the IT team. So he's asked that we have some information there, like a set of procedures available, so that if an administrator in an RTO is encountering an issue, they can go there, they might be able to fix their issue immediately. But if it proves to be an ongoing problem, then they contact the team.
No, thanks for Sandra. I'll just show you what current portal we got for AFAC. So just a portal, I'll share my screen. Nicola, can you allow me to share the screen, please?
Yeah, I've just made you a co-host.
Yeah. So sharing my screen. So as everyone, I hope everyone can see my screen. As everyone can see my screen, this is Ict Support Portal we have created for AFAC for the staff. So what we do is we try to keep all the basic troubleshooting IT questions in the portal. Yeah, so they don't have to call us, or this is the first point of contact. This is just a sample what we do inside AFAC. So if you click on it, you'll get more information. So that's what we're planning to do for AIIMS as well. I'll talk to Nicola, Amy, James, Sandra, and try to get some basic questions, what people might struggle with. We'll upload into this portal. This is a publicly available portal, no username, no login. That portal will have a basic information for agencies and activists to go at the first place. If you don't have much, you don't get much support here, feel free to send an email at aimsonline@afac.com.au, and then we'll triage within ourselves and we'll get back to you. So that's our aim, Sandra, so that people get access to the information as easy as possible. So that's the best way we cut off. Thank you, Sandra.
And Lisa? Yep,
yes,
go ahead.
Sandra. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
And sorry, I think Nicola did ask during the presentation about the PDF. By the time I turned myself on mute, I got late. So what we're planning to do for the AIIMS online PDF course, we'll send all the agencies, all the people through our AFAC shop. They'll be able to download the PDF document, and we just trying to figure out, so we want to restrict the access so that they can't download multiple times or print it out. So they'll be for one use. So we're trying to work out the ways if they could download once or they could read the manual on a web browser. I'm still behind the scenes, I'm still trying to figure it out. So once that has been done, Nicola would have a record of who has access to that AIIMS manual, and then Nicola would be charging the particular agencies and RTOs accordingly. So that's our plan, to give access to AIIMS PDF document online. Any other additions, Nicola or Sandra, you want to add on?
And then, for example, some agencies might do a blended approach. You know, they still want to bring their people into a workshop environment as well as do the course online. So they'll have a copy on their tablet of the manual, which means it's just a bit easier for them, and they can keep a record for themselves. I note that we have a couple of comments from Lisa. You've done an independent inquiry. Did you want to make a comment about that, or?
Where was this, Sandra?
Oh, it's come through on Teams. Doesn't matter. Someone's come through. Okay, didn't come through this chat function. It came to me through Teams. Okay.
I think if nobody has any more questions, then we can pretty much.
I think it might be to do with another group. I'm sorry, I got confused. Sorry.
I'd like to thank everyone for dialing in for today's session. Once again, we're here to respond to any queries and to start onboarding RTOs as of the 9th of November. So please make contact with us at aimsonline@afac.com.au. And thanks very much for your participation.
Has it been useful in terms of using this course?
Thumbs up. Very good.